he had seen God.
I see him as I see you here, only more clearly. God can be seen, one can talk to him, but who cares for God? People shed torrents of tears for their wives and their children and wealth and property, but who weep for the vision of God? If one cries sincerely for God, one can surely see him.
Naren was drawn to this unusual mystic and kept coming to see him. One day in the spring of 1882, he arrived unannounced.
I found him sitting deep in meditation. There was no one with him. He was in an ecstatic mood. He muttered something to himself that I couldn't understand. He looked hard at me and then arose and approached me. I thought we were about to have another crazy scene. Scarcely had that thought passed through my mind when he placed his right foot on my body. Immediately I had a wondrous experience. My eyes were wide open and I saw that everything in the room, including the walls themselves, was rapidly whirling around me and receding. At the same time, it seemed to me that my consciousness of self, together with the entire universe, was about to vanish into a vast, all-devouring. I cried out loudly, "Huck, what are you doing to me? Don't you know I have parents at home?" When the master heard this, he gave a loud laugh. Then he touched my chest with his hand and said, "All right, let it stop now. It needs to be done all at once. It will happen in its own good time." To my amazement, the extraordinary vision vanished as suddenly as it had come.
Amused by all his questions, Ramakrishna offered the young man many mystical powers. Naren refused.
Let me realize God first, and then I shall perhaps know whether or not I want supernatural powers. If I accept them now, I may forget God, make selfish use of them, and thus come to grief.
He was the perfect messenger for someone like Sri Ramakrishna, because Sri Ramakrishna in the West would have appeared utterly bizarre to most Westerners. They would not have known how to approach such a figure.
This experience changed everything. He began to shed his old life and immersed himself completely on the mystical path. Years later, when he reflected upon this time, he said,
After all, I'm only the boy who used to listen rapt wonderingly to the wonderful words of Sri Ramakrishna and the Banyan meditation.
In 1884, his father suddenly died, leaving the family destitute and almost homeless. He tried to manage the legal battles to save their estate, but things
So please, Mother.
ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वामेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. May we be protected, may we be nourished, may we strive with energy and vigor. May our study, may our contemplation be enlightening and not give rise to hostility. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning, everyone. So we are very happy that we have gathered here for devotees meet. Sorry. It is said, and there is a shloka. Vishnu says, Naham tisthami vaikunthe yoginam hridayena cha madbhaktaha yatra gayanti tatra tisthami hem Narada. So Narada asked, where do you reside? So Vishnu said, God, that we have another name called Vishnu. Vishnu means all pervading. That I don't stay in Vaikuntha, which is my abode, but I don't stay there. Then where do you stay? Not in the hearts of yogis also, because they are meditating on Nirakar, Nirguna, so Shanta. So where do you stay then? Vaikuntha, your abode, there you don't stay. Yogina hridayena cha madbhaktaha yatra gayanti. Wherever my devotees sing my glories, I stay there. So God is very much here. Please realize this. This God is here, He is present. And also, Sri Ramakrishna said that the hearts of devotees are my parlor. So, he said, a jamindar, aristocrat, or say nowadays leaders, or very eminent person, say business leader, if political leader has got some reservations, so political. They may have, no, don't worry. There's some mucus is coming. So, they may have their own residence, but that they don't use much. They have their parlor, office, where they work. Similarly, God resides in the hearts of devotees. And this is not a story only. Sri Ramakrishna saw. When somebody, a Pandit, was reciting and explaining Bhagavatam at Dakshineshwar. So Sri Ramakrishna saw that God appeared before him in that form, and from there a rays of consciousness touched Bhagavatam and himself, Sri Ramakrishna, and God. So Bhagavata, Bhakta, and Bhagavan. Scriptures and God and devotees are not three. They are three in one, one in three. So we are very happy that you are here and think about God, contemplating on Him. So here the presence of God is very much there. It doesn't matter how many numbers. Numbers are not important. Important is the presence and to contemplate on God. That is more important. Now I'll read a little from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We start reading Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The talk was going on about Hajra, Master. Now and then, he comes to me and becomes mellowed. But he is a pest. Again, he argues. It is very hard to get rid of egotism. The ego this is the impediment in our lives. Wherever you'll find this little trouble, it is because of ego. You may cut down an ashwatha tree, but the next day a sprout will spring up. as long as the roots remain, the tree will grow again. I said to Hajra, don't speak ill of anyone. It is Narayana himself who has assumed all these forms. One can worship even a wicked person. Haven't you observed the Kumari Puja? Why should you worship a girl who has all the physical limitations of a human being? It is because she is a form of the Divine Mother. But God dwells in the special way in his devotee. The devotee is his parlor. If the god has a large body, then it makes a good tanpura. The tanpura instrument, that musical instrument you must have seen. So, it gives a nice sound. Two monks had arrived at the temple garden. In the morning, they were devoted to the study of the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedanta, and other scriptures. They entered the master's room, saluted him, and sat on the mat on the floor. Sri Ramakrishna was seated on the small couch. The master spoke to the sadhu in Hindustani, that means in Hindi language. Anyway, I'll stop here. There is no end of it. But I have to maintain the time. So just think that God is within us and God is present here. And let us enjoy his company. That's more important. And Hajra, why Hajra? He was brought in this scenario. In the Leela of Sri Ramakrishna, Hajra was brought to show what is egotism and something Sri Ramakrishna wanted to tell, so he would give example of Hajra. So he had a special place in in the Leela. We have to see that from that standpoint. Okay, so we'll proceed as the program shows, one by one. There is no need of calling, so that takes time. So, most welcome. Let us enjoy.
Namaste everyone. My name is Vinuta. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thanks to Swamiji and Lokeshji who thought that this would be a suitable topic to present and to glorify God. So there are several different ways of worship. So it's called Navavida Bhakti. So 9 different forms that you can try to pray to God. So it need not be in one way. Some like to sing, some like to chant, some like stories. I am a big fan of stories. So this is a huge collection of stories. And today we are seeing Lord Shiva, who is considered one of the prime deities in Hinduism, and how the several stories in Shiva's in the Shiva Purana, that is a collection of stories related to Shiva, it resembles Ramakrishna. In this picture, you can see that there is a huge pillar of light in between, and on one side is Brahma and the other side is Vishnu. So these are the 3 trinities, main trinities who are responsible for the world. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the maintainer or preserver, and Shiva is the destroyer. So they all coordinate together to make this creation. And it's supposed to, these are stories which gives us values. So think it in that perspective. It's not that they have fights, but it is said that Brahma and Vishnu, they too were contending, saying, I'm better, I'm I'm the best, something like that. So between them, Brahma and Vishnu, the pillar of light emerged, that is Shiva, and they were supposed to find the end or the beginning of the pillar. So Brahma, he went up with the swan, which is his vehicle, and Vishnu, he could transform himself as a boar, and he dug deeper, like going downwards. And when Brahma, he saw a flower. Generally, we keep a flower on top of any deity. So he found that flower, not the end, but he said that I have reached the end, and he came back saying that I am the winner. But it was not. The light beam is never ending. It is like eternal, right? So it wasn't the truth, and that is why Brahma was cursed that he is not worshipped anymore in any of the places. So generally, we don't see Brahma's temple in anywhere. Maybe there is 1 or 2 places which has temples, but universally Brahma is not worshipped, even though he is the creator of the universe. And Vishnu, he didn't lie. So he is worshipped as Satya Narayana. Satya is truth, and Narayana is like eternal. So even among gods, they try to come up with these stories in order to educate us about truth and how about lying. Okay, next. Similarly, this was in Shiva Purana, right? This story, and the same beam of light that we saw in the previous slide during Ramakrishna's birth. Okay, his mother Chandramani saw a beam of light appear before her. That there was a Shiva temple nearby, near her house, and she visited the house, and she saw a beam of light emerge in front of her, and that beam of light entered her. So she knew that it's the God or the child of God that is entering. She could feel that. And he was born very close to Shiva. It is Shivaratri, 3 days after Shivaratri. Shivaratri is a very auspicious day when Shiva is said to travel the whole universe. So just 3 days after Shivaratri, Ramakrishna was born, and he was born just before sunrise. And as he was born, the sun light spread across the world. It is just meaning that just like the sun is dispersing all the darkness away, right? So Ramakrishna is born to take away the ignorance or the darkness from the world. So there are several such similarities that you can see, that you can say Shiva is born as Ramakrishna, or Ramakrishna is himself Shiva. So you can keep on feeling that correspondence. Each and every story has something related. And this is one, again, a beautiful story wherein Shiva, this is Lord Shiva, and you can see with his third eye open, his burning the god of love, or it is Cupid in like Western words. So it's the Cupid, or we call him Manmata. He's burning him. Okay, that Cupid had disturbed Shiva when he was in deep meditation and penance. He had shot a arrow of roses or arrow of flowers. It wouldn't have hurt much, but you might be wondering why he is trying to burn him to ashes. It signifies that Shiva is so much, you can say, he doesn't like any materialistic things. He likes to take things spiritually. So all the things that we consider, like we want that, we want this, we want a house, we want a car, it's never ending. We, as humans, we believe that if we get to something, some point, maybe if we attain a higher position, we'll be happy. If we get a big house with so many rooms or something, or many helpers at home and all those things, we assume that we'll be happy. But there is no limit, no matter how much, even Elon Musk or the highest billionaire. So even then, there will be something lacking. So this is what, no matter what materialistic pleasure we attain, we won't be satisfied, because our heart and soul is seeking for that permanent happiness. When we reached God, that is when we feel the Satchitananda, or the divinity, or that transcendental happiness. So he is showing us, signifying that the sensual pleasures or something being in the materialistic things should be burned down. So we should not keep on thinking about these, rather focus on attaining the divinity. So here, even Ramakrishna, for that matter, as he was born, Dhani is the midwife who helped his mom. It seems as he was born, she placed him on the ground to help his mom. And when she turned to look at Ramakrishna, even though he's just a newborn baby, he had rolled into a fireplace nearby which had ashes in it. So Shiva is considered to have ashes all over his body, just to signify that I wouldn't care about my looks or anything, right? Shiva, as I said, he doesn't care about the materialistic things. So he smears his, just like we try to, these days they say morning routine, evening routine, that moisturizer, something they keep on applying one after the other. But Shiva, just to show that these are just materialistic things which have no value, he just smears his body with ashes. And Ramakrishna, as a baby, he had rolled into ashes, it seems. So there is a same correspondence to that. It's more about renunciation. We should aim for renunciation, not for materialistic pleasures. Although we need it to survival, I'm not saying just, okay, give up everything and let's go take up sannyasa. It's not like that. Even we should not be hankering for that more and more and more and more, not in that direction, but we should hanker for devotion, the bhakti. Okay. And this is the situation when Ramakrishna was just 9-year-old boy, and he got an opportunity to take part in a play, and he had to become Shiva in that. He had to wear the dress of Shiva and participate in it. And as he went there to enact the play, he was in so much ecstasy. So he was lost in that, and it is believed that he stayed in that ecstasy for 3 days. Can you imagine, like a 9-year-old being in that ecstatic state for 3 days? So that was amazing. Even Shiva, for that matter, even if you see the posture, nowhere you see Shiva like standing or in any different poses. Generally, he is believed to sit like this in meditation. So there is one-to-one correspondence even here. All right. Yeah, so I have highlighted that he was in that state for 3 days. And this is a beautiful story. And here we can see it's not just men or women, they are equal, to signify that both are equal. And everybody is a soul, basically, with the high divine power, right? Shiva and Parvati in this scenario, let me tell you the story of this. This is called Ardha Narishwara. Ardha is half, Nari is woman, and Ishwara is the other Shiva. Okay, so Ardhanarishwara is the story. And once a sage named Bhrigu, not Bhrigu, sorry, it's let me come. There was one rishi who had approached. He went to those times they could travel. So, astral travel, they could say, right? So they could go to the abode of Shiva. And in there, he saw Shiva on one side and Parvati, the other half, better half. So his wife on the other side. So they both were sitting and meditating. And this rishi, he was a ardent devotee of Shiva, and he just wanted to worship Shiva. He didn't want it to accept that, okay, even though his wife, we generally bow down to whoever we see, right? We just don't separately go and say only to Swamiji or only to him, only to her. We generally say, we bow down to everyone in the hall. So, but he just went and bowed down to Shiva. And Parvati, she, even though she is his wife, she felt humiliated that this saint is not bowing down to me. He is not even saying hello, or he is not even greeting me, right? So she was feeling low. That Shiva could see that she is feeling humiliated. He gestured her to come sit on his lap. So then they are kind of inseparable, right? So she came and sat on Shiva's lap. Even then, this rishi was so adamant that I will only worship Shiva, not Parvati or his wife. So he turned himself into a snake and he went circumambulated only Shiva. Next, that is when Shiva and Parvati, just to signify that they are one and the same, they are like half and half, inseparable, they both merged into one. This is the form that they took. So half of it is Shiva, half of it is Parvati, and they showed that we are one and the same. But the story continues, it goes to a very high level. You can research about it, and it's a very nice story if you see. Okay, yeah. And similarly, this is one of the stories that Ramakrishna, he was pacing back and forth in Dakshineshwara. And Mathur, he was the son-in-law of a queen, Rani Rasmani. So he was seeing from a distance from one of the rooms in a palace, and he saw, and he just ran and went down, threw himself down at Ramakrishna's feet and started crying. And Ramakrishna was like, you are the son-in-law of a queen, and what will people think if you do like this? Come on, get up, he says. And then, why did you do this? Why are you crying? That is what Ramakrishna asked. And Mathur, he said, as you were pacing back and forth, as you came forward, I could see the Divine Mother, the Parvati, or Mother Kali herself. And when you turned around and walked back, I could see Lord Shiva. So even there, Ramakrishna is showing that they are one and the same, right? It is like two sides of the coin, or just like you saw Shiva and Parvati merged into one, Ramakrishna could show that the Mother Kali and Shiva, they both are one and the same. Okay, next. And this is one more beautiful story. The demons and demigods, they were fighting for the elixir, or Amrita as we call. They were fighting who will get the immortality potion. So then there were several, they had to churn the ocean, the milk ocean. We cannot relate it to this ocean in this world. It's like in the higher world, there is milk ocean, it seems. So if we all get a chance, let's see. So in the milk ocean, they had to churn the, churning is like, earlier days we used to do, the buttermilk used to be churned and to get the butter. There are several machines available, but we haven't seen the process lately. So, yeah. So they had to churn the milk ocean to get that portion. And in that process, there were several things that were coming out of the ocean. Just like maybe some, like churning the butter, some other things will also get collected, right? So there were good things as well, like Kamadhenu, or even the goddess of wealth came out of it, and so many list of things. But while churning, there came out poison as well. But now who will accept that poison, right? Everybody wanted the immortality potion, and now they are getting poison. Everybody started coughing. There was a huge chaos, that like just like a smoke, right? When you have a smoke around, nobody wants to, everybody wants to run away. And at that moment, Lord Shiva himself, he didn't want anything else. He was ready to accept that whole poisonous smoke, or what. He gathered it up, he put it in his palms just like this. He collected, made it into small, it's like, yeah, we cannot even imagine what it is like. But he got together all that in his hands, and he drank that, even though it is poison. And Parvati, or goddess Kali, she came and stopped it at his tongue, because if it reached inside, maybe it would harm him. So she stopped at his tongue, and he is called Neelakanta, like the blue throat person. So he took all that. Even he didn't want anything else. There were so many nice things coming out of those, the churning process, but he didn't care about that. But he wanted to protect and save everybody, and he gathered that poison and drank that himself. The same thing we can see in the Ramakrishna's life. Whenever devotees approached him, it seems he used to take their bad karmas away. Yeah, we couldn't see it, but he gathered all those and kept on drinking it, or kept on taking it in, and that is why it is believed that Ramakrishna got throat cancer. Yeah, and finally, it is like Ramakrishna always said that Jiva is a soul. Soul is like Shiva, and Shiva is Jiva. So, next, yeah. And in other words, like everybody has their divinity. That soul has immense potential, the divine potential that we have to realize. As I said, rather than hankering for different things, we should hanker for more devotion, and that might be different paths. You can, if you like reading books, start reading books, spiritual books, not something kids stories or any novels, but make a pledge that you will read some 1 or 2 pages is also fine every day. Or listen to song. If you like listening to songs or stories, listen. If you want to chant names, like the Nama Japa they call, if you wish to do the chanting, you can start doing that. So there are several ways to approach God, but you have to be focused on doing that. We all do our work, we all try to get food and all get a good job and all that, but we should never leave the path of spirituality. That is what our main focus should be. And Ramakrishna has himself demonstrated that we all have divinity in us, and it is just a matter of time that we have to realize that. So let's all try to work harder and try to go towards spirituality. Materialistic things will always keep happening, so don't worry much about it. Yeah, thank you. Dhanyavad.
So one thing I think I should clarify. Please keep your time, 10 minutes. So, but otherwise we'll be extending this for 3-4 hours. So that's one thing. Purana is a kind of literature to highlight some principles, like this Samudra Manthan, churning of the ocean. Actually, if you see, even it is going on now. Churning, that means Western, Eastern thoughts, that's also a churning. Something comes, something is poisonous, something is good for humanity. Similarly, science and also spirituality, the churning is going on. So this is a principle, to show some principle, such imagery as taken. Similarly, third eye of Shiva, it is Jnana Chakshu. See, something, if you walk in an orthopedic surgeon's place, he will understand what is the ailment, because he has that third eye, the Jnana Chakshu. So, remember Sri Ramakrishna, when Totapuri said, why you cannot meditate? Meditate on this pain. And he started meditating. The Divine Mother came, a blissful mother came, laughing. But Sri Ramakrishna took the sword of knowledge and cut her into two. So this is Jnana Chakshu. So similarly, third eye is our eye of knowledge and spiritual knowledge. It's not, see, this is our mundane knowledge of this world, but something which is spiritual, so that comes insight. Through insight one should see. And Shiva saw that the allurement of senses that Cupid offered, it is against spiritual existence. Therefore, he burnt him. Remember Mar. In the case of Buddha, the temptation came, Mar. So he destroyed that. So this is the story. But this is to depict something. Similarly, that Shiva and Parvati, there are no two. Neha nanasti kinchana. It is all unified. We are to honor all. So these are the underlying teaching. And through Purana, these are taught in a storytelling manner. Purana says, ordinarily it is called mythology, but it is not mythology. It has some principles that are depicted. So I request you, please keep 10 minutes. Otherwise, we'll be sitting here for a long time. Thank you.
That's what I thought. Okay. Yes. Just going to do this. Okay. Yeah. So me reading from They Lived with God, the chapter on Balaram Basu. Usually Sri Ramakrishna would see his devotees and disciples in a vision or an ecstasy before they came to him. One day he had a vision of Chaitanya and his followers singing and dancing near the Panchavati, between the banyan tree and the bakul tree. As soon as the master met Balaram Basu for the first time, he received him affectionately, as if he were already familiar with him. He said, Balaram, was a devotee of the inner circle of Chaitanya. He belongs to this place, meaning himself. I saw in ecstasy how Chaitanya, along with his main disciples Advaita and Nityananda, brought about a flood of divine love in the country and inspired the masses through their enchanting kirtan. In that party, I saw him, Balaram. Balaram was born in December 1842 in a wealthy Vaishnava family in North Calcutta. His grandfather, Guru Prasad Basu, had established a Radha Sham temple in his home. And because of that, that section of the city came to be known as Shyam Bazar. He also built a Shyam Sundar temple on the bank of the Yamuna in Vrindaban at a cost of 100,000 rupees. It is called Kala Babu's Kunja, or Grove. Balaram's father, Radha Mohan, and uncle, Bindu Madhav, together bought a large estate in the Balaswar district of Orissa and established an office for its management at Kothar. Bindu Madhav had 3 sons. Nimaya Charan supervised the estate. Hari Vallabh was a lawyer in Cuttack, and Achyutananda lived in their house in Calcutta. Radha Mohan also had 3 sons, Jagannath, Balaram, and Sadhu Prasad, and 2 daughters, Vishnu Priya and Hemalata. Radha Mohan entrusted the management of their joint estate in Orissa to his brother and nephews and stayed mostly in Vrindaban. There, in that solitary holy place, he looked after the temple management while practicing spiritual discipline. Following a family custom, he would repeat his mantra while standing in the courtyard in front of the temple and then meditate there. The rest of the day, he would study devotional scriptures and arrange for the feeding of the devotees of Krishna. Balaram imbibed from his father a devotional nature and an indifference towards the world. Like Radha Mohan, Balaram spent several hours every morning in japa and meditation. He also entrusted the management of the estate to his cousins and remained satisfied with what they gave him as a monthly allowance. Balaram was married to Krishna Bhaivani, a sister of Baburam, Swami Premananda, and they had 2 daughters and 1 son. Balaram suffered greatly from digestive troubles, and for 12 years he had to live on milk and gruel. In order to regain his health, he lived most of his period in Puri, the holy place of Jagannath, on the coast of the Bay of Bengal. There he became acquainted with many Vaishnava monks, and this stirred his interest in spiritual life even more. His father and cousins began to worry lest Balaram renounce his family and become a mendicant. When Balaram came to Calcutta to attend his elder daughter's marriage, his cousins urged him to stay. In order to further persuade him, Hari Vallabh even bought a house at 57 Ramakanta Bose Street, which he offered to Balaram. Balaram did not want to accept it. If he lived in Calcutta, he would not be able to make his daily visit to Lord Jagannath and have the company of holy people. But to satisfy his cousins, he decided to remain in Calcutta for a while and then return to Puri. While he was still living in Puri, Balaram had read about the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna in the Sulabh Samachar, a journal edited by Keshab Chandra Sen. He had also received a letter from one of his family's priests, Ram Dayal, giving a detailed account of Sri Ramakrishna's holy life. Ram Dayal had met with the master personally and wrote Balaram to come immediately to see him. The day after he arrived in Calcutta, Balaram went with Ram Dayal to Dakshineshwar. It was probably the 1st of January 1881, and they reached there late in the afternoon and found Sri Ramakrishna's room crowded with Brahmo devotees, including Keshab. Balaram did not get a chance to introduce himself, but sat down in a corner and listened to the master. Sri Ramakrishna was saying, God cannot be seen without yearning of the heart, and this yearning is impossible unless one is finished with the experiences of life. Those who live surrounded by lust and gold have not yet come to the end of their experiences. Do not yearn for God. As soon as the Brahmos left the room to have some refreshments, Sri Ramakrishna turned to Balaram and said, "Is there anything you want to ask me?" Yes, sir, he replied. Does God really exist? Certainly he does. Can a person see him? Yes, he reveals himself to the devotee who thinks of him as his nearest and dearest. Because you do not get any response by praying to him once, you must not conclude that he does not exist. But why can't I see him when I pray to him so much? Sri Ramakrishna then smiled and asked, "Do you really consider him to be as dear to your heart as your own children?" "No, sir," Balaram admitted. "I never felt that strongly for him." Then the master said in a sweet, convincing voice, "Pray to God, thinking of him as dearer than your own self. Truly, I tell you, he is extremely fond of his devotees. He cannot but reveal himself to them. He comes to a person even before he is sought. If a person comes one step towards God, God comes 10 steps toward that person. There is none more intimate and more affectionate than God." Balaram was very much impressed. Every word of the master's penetrated his heart. He returned home that night, but the next morning he came back to Dakshineshwar on foot. This time Sri Ramakrishna was alone in his room. Seeing Balaram, the master said, "Oh, you have come, very good. Sit down and have some rest. I was just thinking of you. Where do you live?" He replied, "At Bag Bazar." Replied Balaram. The master then inquired in detail about the members of his family, about his children, and other matters, and finally said, "Look here, the Divine Mother has told me that you are my very own. You are one of her suppliers. Many things are stored up for this place," meaning himself, "in your house. Buy something and send it here." Balaram considered this to be his good fortune and gladly obeyed. Often Sri Ramakrishna would advise the devotees for their own welfare to bring a small present, even if it was just a piece worth of something, whenever they visited a temple or a monk. It seemed to Balaram that the master was his very own relative. He had never in his life met such a remarkable person. He noticed that there were similarities between the lives of Sri Chaitanya and Sri Ramakrishna, and he began to wonder, such a sweet nature and repeated bhava samadhi, divine ecstasy, are not found in ordinary human beings. Can it be that Sri Chaitanya has incarnated himself again? With these thoughts in mind, Balaram went back to Calcutta and personally selected some food and other things for the master. He then returned in a carriage to Dakshineshwar. Sri Ramakrishna greeted him warmly and asked his nephew Hriday to put the things away. From this time until the master's death, Balaram supplied all his foodstuffs, such as rice, sugar, candy, farina, sago, barley, vermicelli, tapioca, and so forth. The master used to say, "Balaram's food is very pure. The members of his family have for generations been devotees and have been hospitable to monks and beggars. His father is living a retired life at Vrindavan, and he passes his time calling upon the Lord. Not only can I take Balaram's food, but I take it with pleasure." Again, all the members of his family are attuned to the same ideal. From the master and mistresses down to the children, they are all devoted to God. They never take a drop of water without saying their prayers. They are as hospitable as they are pious. Needless to say, Sri Ramakrishna was always welcome at Balaram's home. The master visited his home 100 times, and Balaram kept a record of all those visits. Whenever necessary, the master would stay overnight at Balaram's and there partake of the prasad of Jagannath, their family deity, who was worshipped every day in their home. The master sometimes jokingly referred to the temple as Dakshineshwar, as Mother Kali's fort. Balaram's home was thus his Calcutta fort, or as he sometimes called it, his parlor. M. wrote in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Balaram's home in Calcutta had been sanctified many times by the master's presence. There he frequently lost himself in samadhi, dancing, singing, or talking about God. Those of the master's disciples and devotees who could not go to Dakshineshwar visited him there and received his instructions. He often asked Balaram to invite young disciples such as Rakal, Bhavanath, and Narendra to his house, saying, "These are pure souls and the veritable manifestations of God. To feed them is to feed God himself. They are born with special divine attributes. By serving them, you will be serving God." And so it happened that whenever the master was at Balaram's house, the devotees would gather there. It was the master's chief vineyard in Calcutta. It was here that the devotees came to know each other intimately. Every year, Balaram celebrated the chariot festival of the Lord Jagannath in his home. The master's presence greatly enhanced the joy of the occasion. The devotees would decorate Lord Jagannath's small wooden chariot with cloth, flowers, and flags, and then place the image in it. There was a small courtyard in the middle of the house, around which overhung the verandas on the upper floors. After the worship, the chariot would be pulled round and round by devotees on these verandas, while a kirtan party followed, singing devotional songs. This went on for hours. Swami Shardananda described the chariot festival of 1885. A kirtan party came. The master and the devotees joined in their singing as the chariot was drawn. Where else could one experience and witness such a flow of bliss, of exuberant devotion, of divine ecstasy, of such sweet, graceful dancing of the Master? Pleased with the pure love of the pious family, Lord Jagannath did indeed himself manifest in the image of the chariot and in the body of Sri Ramakrishna. It was a rare sight, carried away by the current of that overflowing devotion. Even the heart of an atheist would melt. What to speak of the devotees? After a few hours of such kirtan, cooked food was offered to Jagannath. The Master would then partake of the prasad, followed by the devotees. That fair of bliss came to an end late at night. At Balaram's repeated request, his father, Radha Mohan, came to Calcutta from Vrindavan to meet the Master. Sri Ramakrishna knew that Radha Mohan was a steadfast member of the Vaishnava sect, but he wanted to broaden his religious outlook. Thus the Master said to him, "He's indeed a real man who has harmonized everything. Most people are one-sided, but I find that all opinions point to the one, all views, the Shakta, the Vaishnava, the Vedanta, have that one for their center. He who is formless is, again, endowed with form. It is he who appears in different forms." On another occasion, the Master said to Balaram's father, "The whole thing is to love God and taste his sweetness. He is sweetness and the devotee is its enjoyer. The devotee drinks the sweet bliss of God. Further, God is the lotus and the devotee the bee. The devotee sips the honey of the lotus. As a devotee cannot live without God, so also God cannot live without his devotee. Then the devotee becomes a sweetness, and God its enjoyer. The devotee becomes the lotus, and God the bee. It is the Godhead that has become these two in order to enjoy its own bliss. That is the significance of the episode of Radha and Krishna. Throughout his life, Balaram, like other Vaishnavas, was a believer in ahimsa, nonviolence. He had even thought it wrong to kill the mosquitoes that disturbed his meditation. But after associating with Sri Ramakrishna for a couple years, he realized that the most important thing in spiritual life is to keep the mind in God. Thus, killing a few mosquitoes for the sake of steady meditation should not be considered a sin. His orthodox upbringing, however, made him doubt this reasoning, and he found himself in a real dilemma. So he immediately left for Dakshineshwar to lay the problem before the Master. Arriving at Sri Ramakrishna's room, he noticed to his great surprise that the Master was busy killing bedbugs. As Balaram approached him and bowed down, the Master said, "There are many bed bugs breeding in the pillow. They bite me day and night, create a distraction in the mind, and keep me from sleeping. So I am killing them." Thus Balaram's question was answered by the Master. Furthermore, he understood that though he had been visiting the Master for 2 or 3 years and observing him closely day and night, the Master had never done anything that might hurt his feelings or disturb his faith. He had waited to teach Balaram this lesson until he knew that Balaram had enough faith in him to be able to accept it. One day, Balaram decided to test Sri Ramakrishna's power of omniscience. As he carried a tray of sweets to the Master, he mentally selected 2 of them for the Master to take. Balaram was amazed, and the Master smiled at him and took those very 2 sweets. As Balaram did not take any active part in the management of the family estate, he was somewhat under the control of his father and cousins, who apportioned to him his monthly share of the income. Because of this, he was very careful about his spending, and some people took this to be miserliness. Although he wanted to serve Sri Ramakrishna lavishly, he could not. But the Master looked more to the heart of his devotee than to the amount he could spend. Sometimes out of fun, however, the Master would tell jokes at Balaram's expense, turning them into lessons for others. One day, Sri Ramakrishna observed that since there were no musical instruments to accompany the singing, no atmosphere could be created. He said, "Do you know how Balaram manages a festival? He is like a miserly Brahmin raising a cow. The cow must eat very little but give milk in torrents. Sing your own songs and beat your own drums. That's Balaram's idea." And on another day, the Master said, "Balaram says to me, 'Please come to Calcutta by boat. Take a carriage only if you must. You see, he has given us a feast today. So this afternoon, he will make us all dance.' One day, he hired a carriage for me from here to Dakshineshwar. He said that the carriage hire was 12 annas. I said to him, 'Will the coachman take me to Dakshineshwar for 12 annas?' 'Oh, that will be plenty,' he replied. One side of the carriage broke down before we reached Dakshineshwar. Besides, the horse stopped every now and then. It simply would not go. And once in a while, the coachman whipped the horse, and then it ran a short distance." Mahendra Ranath Datta, one of Swami Vivekananda's brothers, told an interesting story revealing Balaram's miserliness, as well as his sense of humor. Balaram had a servant who was not well paid, so from time to time he would steal things, and that servant also had a bad temper, and the family members were not happy with him. And one day Swami Yogananda tried to persuade Balaram to get rid of that servant. Balaram replied, "Look, Jogan, servants generally come from poor, uncultured families, and it is taken for granted that they will steal." Okay. Let's finish this up and then, okay. Something. Moreover, if I throw him out, where will he go? Can you tell me where I can find a servant who has renounced lust and gold and who will work but not steal? Sri Ramakrishna's disciples later made a joke out of that remark, saying, "We shall have to find an all-renouncing servant for Balaram." Good. Okay.
Okay, everyone. You're going to hear a gentle alarm at the end of my reduced time. So don't be startled by that. I wanted to mention to you, too, that I'm reading from the book, They Lived with God, and I noticed we have 6 copies in the bookstore. Okay, so we're going to be learning a little bit about the life of Golap Ma, and we'll just dive right in. Invariably, the death of a loved one becomes a turning point. At that time, seeing only darkness and hopelessness all around, people begin to think deeply about life. They realize its emptiness and transitoriness, that life ends in death and union ends in separation. Still, the tears flow as grief consumes the heart, yet such is the law of nature that eventually the heart becomes filled by another loved one and the tears stop. Golap Ma's unbearable grief was actually God's grace, for in her affliction she turned to Sri Ramakrishna and her life was transformed. Golap Sundari Devi, known as Golap Ma, was born in a Brahmin family of North Calcutta, probably in the late 1840s. Her parents arranged for her marriage to a poor Brahmin when she was young, but her husband died after a few years, leaving her with 2 small children, a son and a daughter. And Golap Ma's son was still very young. He also died, and her mainstay in life then became her daughter Chandi. Chandi was a charming, well-mannered girl. When she grew up, Golap Ma arranged for her marriage to Sundari Mohan Tagore, an eminent and wealthy landlord of Kolkata. But again, fate was cruel to Golap Ma. Chandi died prematurely, creating a tremendous void in her mother's life. Golap Ma cried and cursed herself, but could find no cure for her grief. Just then, Yogan Ma, a neighbor, came to her aid. Seeing Golap Ma's terrible suffering, Yogan Ma had compassion for her, and one day in 1885 took her to Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar. Golap Ma later described her first meeting with the master. "When I first went to the master, I was tormented with grief for my daughter Chandi. Yogan took me to him. He touched my head and removed all grief from my heart. It was amazing. In a moment, my mind became calm and serene. I immediately laughed. Like a jnani, a person endowed with spiritual knowledge, I felt that I had come to this world to act in a play. Who is whose mother and who is whose daughter? In my childhood, I had played with cloth dolls, and after that, I played with flesh and blood dolls. This world is nothing but a play with dolls, and so why should I cry for my daughter? It is a glorious thing to cry for God." Such was the power of the master. After Golap Ma had unburdened her heart to Sri Ramakrishna by narrating the sad story of her life, he said in an ecstatic mood, "You are fortunate. God helps those who have no one to call their own." And then he sang a song which I will now read to you. "Dwell, O mind, within yourself. Enter no other's home. If you but seek there, you will find all you are searching for. God, the true philosopher's stone who answers every prayer, lies hidden deep within your heart, the richest gem of all. It is said that the master's touch, his words, and his song soothed Golap Ma's grieving heart and brought new hope and happiness to her life. Greatly moved by her first meeting with the master, Golap Ma visited him frequently thereafter. On the 13th of June, 1885, she arrived at Dakshineshwar while the master was talking with some devotees. She stood quietly by the north door and listened. The master noticed her and started talking about human grief. Describing the bereavement of his boyhood friend, Ram Malik, he said, "Ram said he had no children. He brought up his nephew, but the boy died. He told me this with a sigh and his eyes filled with tears. He was grief-stricken for his nephew. Then the master said, 'A man came here the other day. He sat a few minutes and then said, "Let me go and see the moon face of my child." I couldn't control myself and I said, "So you prefer your son's moon face to God's moon face? Get out, you fool." The truth is that God alone is real and all else is unreal. Men, universe, home, and children, all these are like the magic of the magician. The magician alone is real and his magic is unreal. God is like an ocean, and living beings are all its bubbles. And on that note, thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Hello, I will also be reading from They Lived with God on Shirishtranda Datta. The Hindu scriptures say a householder should establish his life in spirituality. He should follow the path of truth, and he should dedicate his actions and their results to the eternal being. Human society is nothing but the sum total of individuals. If the life of an individual householder is weak, worldly, dishonest, and disreputable, then the family life, social life, and national life are also polluted. Therefore, for the betterment of society, the character of each individual being must be developed. Of course, there are a few ideal citizens in any society, but those who do exist protect the society from various vicissitudes and are a source of inspiration to all. Suresh Chandra Datta was an ideal householder, disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. He was born in 1850 at Hatkola in West Kolkata in an aristocratic family. From boyhood, Suresh was honest, humble, simple, and self-reliant. Originally a Brahmo, he first heard about Sri Ramakrishna from Keshav Chandra Sen. Suresh and Durga Chanran Nag, who had moved to Calcutta from Dhaka to study medicine, both lived in the same area. They became close friends, and Suresh used to address Durga Charan as uncle. Durga Charan was then studying homeopathic medicine, and since it required some knowledge of English, he began to study Hailey's English grammar. But his English pronunciation was poor, and Suresh would tease him by saying, "Your pronunciation has a strong accent peculiar to all people of East Bengal." However, since Suresh had a good command of the English language, he was able to help Durga Charan. Every evening, Suresh would go to Durga Charan's house to discuss religion. Suresh was a staunch follower of Brahmo Samaj, which advocated the belief in God without form, while Durga Charan was an Orthodox Hindu who obeyed every scriptural injunction. Daily, the two men had heated religious discussions, but their different views were never reconciled. One day, in one of their friendly squabbles, Durga Charan said to Suresh, "The gods and goddesses of the Hindus, as well as the formless Brahman, are all true, but to attain Brahman is so difficult, I doubt whether 1 or 2 in a million can even reach this stage. Hence arises the necessity to believe in the various gods and goddesses of Hinduism. Do you think that the Vedas, the Puranas, Tantras, and mantras are all false? Suresh retorted, Uncle, set aside your scriptures. I have no faith in them. From time to time, Suresh would take Durga Charan to attend Keshav Sen's lectures. They would also meditate with Brahma devotees at night on the banks of the Ganga. Durga Charan longed for God and a guru to guide him. Fortunately, Suresh happened to hear at Keshav's Brahman Samaj about Sri Ramakrishna, the Dakshineshwar saint. But he waited for 2 months before he suggested to Durga Charan that they visit the master. The very day after lunch, they left for Dakshineshwar. It was a hot summer day in April or May, probably in 1883. They arrived in Dakshineshwar at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Both were delighted to see the panoramic view of the temple garden and to feel the peaceful atmosphere. Slowly they reached the eastern veranda of Sri Ramakrishna's room and asked a bearded gentleman named Pratap Chandra Hazra about the saint who lived there. But Hazra deliberately misinformed them, saying that the saint had gone to Chandanangor that day. Wearily and dejected, they were about to return home when they noticed someone inside the room beckoning them to enter. It was Sri Ramakrishna. He received them graciously, asked them to sit down, and explained that Hazra often told that story in order to keep strangers away. Then he asked them to sit closer and began to chat. The master talked to them for some time, and in the course of conversation said, "Live in this world like a mudfish. There is nothing wrong in staying at home. The mudfish lives in the mud, but is not soiled by it. Similarly, live in the world, but never be contaminated by its evils." Then Sri Ramakrishna sent them to the Panchavati Grove to meditate. After half an hour, they returned to the master's room, and Sri Ramakrishna took them around to the various temples in the Dakshineshwar compound. He first walked to the 12 Shiva temples and prostrated before each deity. Circumambulating their respective shrines, Durga Chandra followed the master's example, but Suresh merely looked on, for he had no faith in Hindu gods and goddesses. Sri Ramakrishna took them next to the Krishna and the Kali temples. Both Suresh and Durga Charan were astonished by the ecstatic mood which overpowered the master. When he entered the Kali temple, as a restless child holds the hem of his mother's garment and moves around her, so the master went around the image of Kali and prostrated before her. At about 5 o'clock after returning to the master's room, Suresh and Durga Charan took their leave of Sri Ramakrishna, who gave them this parting advice: "Come again. Our acquaintance will grow deeper if you keep on coming regularly for some time." The experiences of that first meeting left an indelible impression on their minds, and they could not help but talk about Sri Ramakrishna. The next week, they both visited the master again. On seeing these two sincere seekers, Sri Ramakrishna exclaimed in an ecstatic mood, "You have done well in coming again. I have been waiting here for you for a long time." The master once again asked them to meditate in the Panchavati Grove. Suresh visited the master 8 or 9 times in the company of Durga Charan. Undoubtedly, he must have visited Sri Ramakrishna many more times alone or with others. Otherwise, he could not have compiled so many of the master's teachings, which he later published in a book. Suresh was not the first, however, to record and publish Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, but the second. The first book of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings was Paramahasar Ukti, recorded in Bengali by Kashyap Chandra Sen and published on January 24th, 1878. Later, Girish Chandra Sen a follower of Kashab, added more teachings to that work along with a short life of the master. This book consisted of 184 teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. The second recording of Paramahatma Ramakrishna Ukti was Suresh Chandra Datta, who published Part 1 in Bengali on December 23, 1884, during the Master's lifetime, and Part 2 in 1886. Gradually, he collected more teachings and in 1894 published a 6-part edition of his book, each part containing 100 teachings in his edition. Suresh included a short biographical sketch of Sri Ramakrishna. In the collection of sayings and in the publication of the book, he was greatly assisted by Hara Mohan Mitra, another householder disciple of the Master. Later, the 6 parts, along with added materials, were published in one Bengali volume, Sri Sri Ramakrishnavar Upadesh, containing 950 teachings. In the introduction, Suresh stated his heart's realization that Sri Ramakrishna was an incarnation of God. I'll call my time there. Thank you very much.
Okay. Whoop, this laptop is too big for this podium, so. I'll be talking on Gopal's mother. So Agoramani Devi was born to a Brahmin family in 1822. Following the social customs of the time, she was married at the age of 9. But her wedding was the first and last time she saw her husband, as he had died before consummating their marriage. This left her a widow at only age 14. She was initiated into spiritual life by her late husband's family's guru, and child Krishna was her chosen deity. Hindu Brahmin widows did not remarry, so she poured all of that love and energy that she would normally give to her husband and children toward her beloved Gopala. After the death of her parents, she lived in the temple garden of the Radha Krishna temple, where her brother was a priest. Here, she lived the incredibly humble, quiet, contemplated life of a monastic. Let's see. Gopal's ma lived a routine life of austerity. She began her day by waking up at 2 a.m., washing her face and hands, then counting her beads until 8 a.m. Then she cleaned the Radha Krishna temple, picked flowers, and made garlands and sandalwood paste. After her afternoon bath in the Ganges, she would meditate in the temple garden until it was time to make an afternoon meal for baby Gopala. She would make and offer the meal, partake of the prasad, and then practice japa until it was time to attend Vesper service. And then after, she would have a simple meal of a few coconut balls with milk for dinner, and then continue with her japa until midnight. She followed this routine for nearly 30 years. Agorimani Devi first met Sri Ramakrishna in 1884, where she initially became attracted to his devotion to spiritual life. This attraction became so intense that over a few days later, while practicing japa, the desire to see him again overtook her, and she left to see him, purchasing a small amount of stale sweets to offer him as she went there. As soon as she arrived, Sri Ramakrishna greeted her warmly, saying, "Oh, you have come. Give me what you have brought for me." Embarrassed, she reluctantly handed over the stale sweets to the master, and he began to relish in them. And he told her, "Why do you spend money for sweets? Prepare some sweet coconut balls, and when you visit the place, bring 1 or 2 with you, and you may bring a little of the ordinary dishes which you cook yourself. I want to eat your cooking." During this time, he did not speak about God or religion, only about this or that food. Gopal's ma couldn't help but think, what a strange monk. He only talks about food. I am a poor widow. Where shall I get so many delicacies for him? Enough. I shall not come back again. And a few days later, she was back again, curry in hand. In the spring of 1885 at 3 a.m., Gopal's ma began practicing her japa as usual, and after finishing, she began offering the result of her japa to her chosen deity, when suddenly she noticed that Sri Ramakrishna was seated beside her. And as she sat in amazement looking toward him, wondering what he was doing there at such a weird hour, he smiled sweetly at her as his form began to disappear and turned into the real baby Gopala. The child of 10 months crawled all over Gopalma and said, "Mother, give me butter." Overcome by this experience, she began to cry, and as she did not have much to offer to baby Gopala, she fed him some dry coconut balls and asked that he please kindly accept them. Gopalma did not perform japa at all that day. Anytime she tried, baby Gopala would snatch the rosary beads and run around the room, crawl all over her, keeping her from her spiritual practice. At daybreak, she ran to Dakshineshwar like a crazed person, baby Gopala in hand. Upon seeing Sri Ramakrishna, she saw no distinction between him and baby Gopala, and in ecstasy began feeding him cream, butter, and other sweets she had brought with her. From this day on, she became convinced that Sri Ramakrishna was none other than her Gopala. Gopalma stayed the whole day at Dakshineshwar until she was sent back home, baby Gopala in hand. For the next few days, baby Gopala caused so much trouble with her spiritual practices. She could not practice japa without him snatching her rosary and crawling all over the place. He played, cried, and slept like any other baby, and Gopalma took care of him. A few days after the initial visions, Gopalma came back to Dakshineshwar and began practicing japa in her spare time. Sri Ramakrishna came and asked, "Why do you practice so much japa now? You have plenty of visions." She replied, "Shall I not practice japa anymore? Have I attained everything?" And that's when he confirmed that yes, she had attained everything. Later on, Gopalma would recount her visions to Narendranath at the request of Sri Ramakrishna. As we know, Naren was a firm believer in the formless God and a member of the Brahmo Samaj who looked down on God with form. As she recalled her visions to him, she was overwhelmed. He was overwhelmed with joyful tears. Her devotion was contagious, and the rationalist Naren was filled with love and religious fervor. As she told the stories of her visions, she would interrupt her story and ask, "My son, you are learned and intelligent, and I am a poor, illiterate widow. I don't understand anything. Please tell me, are these visions true?" And through his tears, Narendra answered, "Yes, mother, whatever you have seen is all true." Gopalma remained a revered figure among the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna. She continued to live a very simple life and served as an inspiration to all devotees through her deep sincerity and a deep maternal love, that which she radiated. To them, she embodied the essence of bhakti. It is said that even in her later years, she would continue to experience the presence of Gopal and nurture him with the same love and care as she was younger. Her end came on July 8th, 1906. She was carried to the Ganga, where she breathed her last breath at dawn, touching the holy water of the river. A monk whispered, Om Ganga Narayana Brahma, during her last hour. And then I'll close with one last thing. Once being asked by a disciple for some advice, Gopalma answered, "Ask advice from Gopala. He is within you. No one can give you better advice than he. That is the truth. Cry with a longing heart and you will reach him." Thank you.
Shri Ramakrishna with Ramchandra Datta. Faith and devotion are two important milestones on the path towards God. Faith removes worry, anxiety, and fear, while devotion makes life smooth and joyful. Human life becomes very painful and burdensome if a person has no one to trust and to love. Spiritual seekers who put their trust in God and love Him wholeheartedly surrender themselves to Him, and as a result, God, the Eternal Father, takes care of them. Just as children enjoy a carefree life in their own homes, so spiritual seekers live happily in this world. Truly, God provides whatever His devotees need. Ramchandra Datta, a householder disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, had unflinching faith in the Master, and his love and devotion for him were exuberant. He used to say that any place Sri Ramakrishna visited, even for a day, became holy, and that whoever came to the Master and served him once was blessed. Ram further asserted that the horse carriage which Sri Ramakrishna took to visit the Calcutta devotees, along with its coachmen and horses, were all sanctified by the Master's touch. Many people consider Ram's attitude to be extreme. Once someone sarcastically remarked, "If that's true, then what is there to fear?" So many people have seen Sri Ramakrishna on the street, and so many coachmen have driven him. Do you think all these people will get liberation? Ram's face turned red, and he vehemently replied, "Go and take the dust off the feet of the coachman who drove the master. Go and take the dust of the feet of the sweeper of Dakshineshwar who saw the master. They will make your life pure and blessed." Ram Chandra Datta was born in Calcutta on October 30th, 1851. His father, Nrsimha Prasad Datta, was devoted to Krishna, and his mother, Tulasmani, was known for her piety and kindness. All of these good qualities Ram imbibed from his parents. When he was 2.5 years old, his mother died, and some woman relatives in their home looked after him. Worshipping Krishna was Ram's favorite pastime when he was young. Sometimes he would arrange a festival and invite playmates with whom he would share prasad. Over time, he would dress himself as a gopi and dance in front of the deity. Ram also liked to visit a hermitage near his home, where he came in contact with monks of different orders. These monks loved the young boy for his devotion and religious fervor. From his boyhood, Ram was very bold and straightforward about his convictions, and no one could persuade him to act contrary to them. When he was 10 years old, he visited the home of a relative who lived about 25 miles away from Calcutta. The relative knew that Ram was a strict vegetarian, but in spite of this, he served him a non-vegetarian meal and tried to persuade him to eat it. Ram was furious and immediately left the house. He did not have any money to buy a train ticket, but a generous person bought one for him so that he could return home. Even in the later part of his life, in spite of his education in science, he remained firm in his convictions. Once a doctor prescribed meat soup for his ailing wife, but Ram would not approve of it. He said, "Let my wife die, but I won't allow meat to enter my house." Fortunately, his wife recovered without the soup. Eventually, Ram's father remarried, but Ram did not get along with his stepmother. Shortly after his marriage, financial difficulties forced Ram's father to sell the ancestral home, and Ram moved to a relative's home. Although Ram suffered various kinds of hardship in his early life, he persevered in his education. He studied at the General Assembly's institution and later was admitted to the Campbell Medical School in Calcutta. Sometime after his graduation, he was appointed an assistant to the government quinine examiner. He also married about this time. Later, when he became financially solvent, he bought a house for his family at Simla, at the central port of Calcutta. Ram was deeply interested in science and studied chemistry under his English supervisor with great diligence. Having learned this subject thoroughly, Ram extracted from an indigenous medical plant an antidote for bloody dysentery. This drug was approved by the government and was recommended by leading doctors. As a result, Ram's fame spread, and he was appointed a member of the Chemist Association of England. He was also promoted to the post of government chemical examiner and was asked to teach the military students at the Calcutta Medical College. Grief is an eye-opener force that forces a person to face the harsh realities of life. The death of his young daughter was a terrible shock to Ram, and a great change came over his life. On the evening of the Kali Puja, sometime after his daughter's death, He went up to the roof of his house and observed the houses of Calcutta glittering with lights. Above, the dark, clear sky was studded with twinkling stars. His grief-stricken heart seemed to be searching for something meaningful in that panorama of nature. All of a sudden, he noticed some clouds passing overhead, driven by the wind. They quickly disappeared. Ran asked himself, where do they come from? And where do they go? Does God exist? If so, can he be seen? He started to visit different religious leaders of the Brahmin, Christian, and Hindu faiths, but no one could answer his questions about God and religion. During this time, Ram's family guru came to his house and wanted to initiate him. Ram was straightforward. Sir, I do not believe in God. Moreover, I have terrible doubts about his existence. Can you tell me the way to realize God? The guru kept quiet. He did not know what to say. The great inquiry began to possess Ram. He became more and more determined to have his doubts removed and to satisfy his hunger for God. He studied many religious books and could find no satisfactory answers to his question. At last, he came to know about Sri Ramakrishna from the writings of Keshab Chandra Sen, a Brahmin leader of Calcutta. On November 13th, 1879, Ram went to Dakshineshwar by boat with Gopal Chandra Mitra and a cousin, Mano Moham Mitra. As soon as they reached the Dakshineshwar temple, they inquired about Sri Ramakrishna and were directed to his room. But when they reached it, they found the door shut, and their Western education made them hesitate to call out or knock. Just then, Sri Ramakrishna opened the door himself and asked them to come in. Ram noticed that Sri Ramakrishna did not look like the traditional oak-clad monk with matted hair and ashes-smeared body. On the contrary, the master was the embodiment of simplicity. Sri Ramakrishna saluted them, addressing them as Narayana, and asked them to sit down. Then he smiled at Ram and said, "Hello, are you not a doctor? He is suffering from fever," pointing to Hriday. "Could you check his pulse?" Ram was astonished that Sri Ramakrishna knew he was a doctor. After examining Hriday, Ram reported that his body temperature was normal. From the very beginning, Sri Ramakrishna made Ram his own and would often inquire about his personal life and mental conflicts. Ram was greatly attracted to the master and started visiting him every Sunday, returning home in the evening. Soon, Ram felt bold enough to ask the question that had haunted him. Does God exist? How can one see God? Sri Ramakrishna: God really exists. You do not see any stars during the day, but that does not mean that the stars do not exist. There is butter in milk, but can anyone know it merely by sight? In order to get the butter, you must churn the milk in a cool place before sunrise. If you want to catch a fish in a pond, you have to learn the art of fishing from those who know it, and then you must sit patiently with a fishing rod, throwing the line in the water. Gradually, the fish will grab your bait. Then, as soon as the float sinks, you can pull the fish to the shore. Similarly, you cannot realize God by a mere wish. Have faith in the instructions of a holy man. Make your mind like a fishing rod, and your prana, or life force, like a hook. Your devotion and japa are like the bait. Eventually, you will be blessed by the vision of God. Ram had recently been connected with the Brahma Samadhi, whose members did not believe in God. God with form. So he was wondering how one could see a formless God. The master read his mind and said, "Yes, God can be seen." Can God, whose creation is so beautiful and enchanting, be imperceptible? Ram: is it possible to realize God in this life? Sri Ramakrishna: you get what you desire. Faith alone is the key to success. Then he sang a song. As a man's meditation, so is his feeling of love. As a man's feeling of love, so is his gain. As faith is the root of all. If the nectar lake of Mother Kali's feet If in the nectar lake of Madhukali's feet my mind remains immersed, of little use are worship, oblations, or sacrifice. The Master continued, the more you advance in one direction, the more you leave behind the opposite direction. If you move 10 steps towards the east, you move 10 steps away from the west. Is that time?
Good morning. I've been asked to speak on Gauri Ma, who is the sort of soul completely dedicated to God. Her story begins at 9 years old, where one day she met a holy man passing through her home of Calcutta, and she found him way more interesting than her peers or their games, and she snuck away 10 miles from home to follow him. In her devotion, that holy man initiated her. And although she was quickly recovered by her family, we see that as a child, Gauri Ma was fearless and uncompromising, and no external pressure could make her deviate from a resolution which she considered right. At 10 years old, her family was visited by a nun, and this nun gave Gauri Ma a stone image of Vishnu and instructed her to worship him. Gauri Ma took this living gift with the utmost seriousness. For the rest of her life, she took this image with her wherever she went, and she took Vishnu as her sole love. Gauri Ma rejected her family's attempts at an arranged marriage because she took this devotion to Vishnu so very seriously. Even so young, she demanded only to be wed to the man who never dies, and her mother, after some serious protesting, consented to letting her child lead a spiritual life. At 18 years old, she was going on a trip with her family, a pilgrimage, and she slipped away because she had sighted a group of traveling monks and nuns. And her family was so worried that they offered ultimately a bounty to try and find her again, but which was completely useless because she was away. She was traveling with holy company and seeing holy places, and at this point she was more inspired towards God realization than ever. And she traveled really widely with monks and nuns, going through pains to disguise herself to avoid detection from her family, to the point of dressing like a man sometimes. And all the while very, very dedicated to her austerities. For over 3 years, she stayed hidden until one day, one uncle happened to spot her in a temple, and she had to very quickly evade him. But the family was alerted. They knew her area, so he was able to find her again, and this time he was armed with a letter from her mother, grief-stricken, and this ultimately was what brought Gauri Ma back home for a little bit. But compared to traveling with monks, a householder's lifestyle really couldn't hold Gauri Ma for long, and silently slipping away. This is her habit. She was out again on the path, which ultimately led her to meet a devotee of Ramakrishna, and this devotee really wanted Gauri Ma to come meet him. And she was resistant. She's I've seen so many monks. I don't need to meet another one. It's just one more. But one morning, while Gauri Ma was during her worship of her Vishnu, she had a vision of 2 feet, and she completely lost consciousness. And when she awoke, she felt someone had tied a string around her heart and was pulling it. And Gauri was kind of, she didn't know what to do with this. She was just going to slip away from wherever she was, and happened to run right into the devotee that had introduced her to Ramakrishna. And this was the moment she was oh, this is it. I'm supposed to go meet him. And so she did. And so as she was bowing and meeting the master, she recognized his feet from the vision that she had just had and lost consciousness from. And she recognized Ramakrishna immediately. And this was like, just brought her such joy and enthusiasm. And Gauri Ma knew Ramakrishna right away. So at that point, Ramakrishna introduced Gauri to Sarada Devi, and from then on, whenever Holy Mother was at Dakshineshwar, so was Gauri Ma. Ramakrishna wanted Gauri Ma to fulfill a special mission, especially for the women in his society, and really wanted Gauri to work in education, especially with the girls. And this was a really repugnant idea to Gauri Ma at the time. And, Ramakrishna just kind of laughed at this, but she wasn't really going to do it. And everybody was really happy there together for a while in Dakshineshwar for a long time. And after a while, Gauri Ma really had a deep desire to go practice austerities in a secluded place. So she wanted to go leave, and she did for about 9 months. And it happened to be at about this time during her absence that Ramakrishna was preparing to end his divine play. And he passed away. And after this, all of his fondest companions went on a pilgrimage where by chance they happened to see Gauri Ma meditating in a temple. And the guy who spotted her told Holy Mother, and the next day they all rendezvoused and got back together, and Gauri Ma was able to, grieve properly Ramakrishna and the news of his passing. For a time, Gauri Ma continued to travel as a nun, and in 1984, when Swami Vivekananda wrote from America, "Where is Gauri Ma? We want 1,000 such mothers with that noble, stirring spirit, both men and women." And at about the same time, Holy Mother reminded her, "The Master said that your life was meant for serving women, the living goddesses." These words touched Gauri Ma. She now had over 20 years of travel under her belt, extensive first-hand knowledge of the Indian people, and especially the women. And at last she felt an inner urge to fulfill that mission Sri Ramakrishna had appointed her. She founded the Sri Sri Sarada Deshwari Ashrama for Women, 14 miles north of her home in Calcutta. There were 25 members when it first started, and later the ashram moved closer to Holy Mother's residence, and 50 women joined, and 300 girls received their education. And even though she was a penniless nun, she spoke with power and persuasion to make the ashram a success, and that too was an extension of her devotion. Her students once asked, "We heard that when you left home, you were a young girl. Weren't you afraid to travel by yourself and without any money?" And you could think of that several times throughout her life. Why wasn't she ever afraid to travel alone, again and again? And she answered, "My darling, all fear is pertaining to the body. I had something with me so that no one could harm me," meaning, of course, the image of Vishnu, her devotion. And this is the devotion that fueled her whole life.
I'm Danny. Hridayaram Mukha Pad Padhyay. The birth, life, and actions of an avatar are divine and therefore inscrutable to the ordinary mind. Moreover, avatars do not seek publicity or write autobiographies. They love to remain hidden, carrying out their missions in an inconspicuous way. From time to time, they may tell the stories about their early struggles and experiences to close disciples. Only in this way do people come to know about their divine lives. It is extremely important for the seekers of God to know of the avatar's detailed personal life.
his quest for the infinite, his spiritual struggles and fulfillment. Unfortunately, very little is known about the spiritual quest of Krishna, Buddha, Christ, and Chaitanya. However, M., the recorder of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, heard directly from the Master about the spiritual journey of what he had heard. He published almost verbatim in the Gospel. Swami Sarananda, a monastic disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, wrote Sri Ramakrishna, the great Master, an authentic and authoritative biography of the Master. He himself witnessed many incidents of Sri Ramakrishna's life. Incidents of Sri Ramakrishna's life. He also heard directly from the Master about many episodes and spiritual experiences of his early life, and he collected still other incidents from those persons who had been eyewitnesses. While writing the second part of the great Master, Sri Ramakrishna, as a spiritual aspirant, Swami Sarananda was helped tremendously by Hiridam's Mukhopadhyay, who was with the Master almost constantly for 25 years, 1855 to 1881. Hiriday was a grandson of Sri Ramakrishna's paternal aunt and was therefore a cousin of the Master, or according to the Hindu view of relationships, a nephew. He was 4 years younger than Sri Ramakrishna, so it seems he was born in 1840. His birthplace, Sihar, was only 4 miles from Kamarpur, where Sri Ramakrishna was born as a boy. Sri Ramakrishna often visited Sihar, and thus he and Hiriday knew each other well. In 1852, Sri Ramakrishna moved to Calcutta, and then in 1855 to Dakshin War, when Hiriday was about 16. He tried but failed to get a job at Burdwan, a town near his village, when he found out that his maternal uncle, Ramkumar, had been appointed priest in the new temple of Rani Rasmani in Dakshin War. He went there without delay. Sri Ramakrishna was delighted to see Hiriday, his boyhood companion. Hiriday was tall, handsome, and muscular. He was also bold, good-humored, and extremely energetic. Hard work did not bother him. Highly resourceful, he easily adapted himself to changing circumstances, often inventing unique solutions when faced with problems. Over and above these qualities, he had genuine affection for his young uncle, Sri Ramakrishna, and spared no pains to make him happy, even at his own expense. In spite of all these good qualities, Hiriday was not notably spiritual. Given the opportunity, he fully enjoyed the world and greatly longed for the worldly prosperity. It was through divine providence that Hiriday came back into Sri Ramakrishna's life when the Master was about to begin his spiritual journey, forgetting his body, surroundings, and everything else. During this long and arduous period, Hiriday became his caretaker, bodyguard, cook, nurse, companion, and advisor. Inevitably, Hiriday embedded good qualities as a result of his holy association with the Master. Sri Ramakrishna said many times that without Hiriday, it would have been impossible for him to protect his body during the period of his spiritual disciples. For his wonderful selfless service, Hiriday will always be gratefully remembered by Sri Ramakrishna's followers. Hiriday later described his feelings for Sri Ramakrishna. Many a time I felt an indescribable attraction towards the Master, and I always remained with him like a shadow. Even a moment's separation from him was painful to me. Before his acceptance of the post of priest, Sri Ramakrishna used to cook his own meal under the Pachavati tree with Hiriday's help, but Hiriday would take his lunch in the temple kitchen. Then at night, they would take prasad of the Divine Mother together. After lunch, Hiriday observed that the Master would invariably disappear for a couple of hours, and he would search for his uncle here and there. When asked later about where he had gone, Sri Ramakrishna would answer, "I was just near about this place." One day, Hiriday found the Master coming from the direction of the Pachavati Grove, so he thought perhaps he had gone there to answer the calls of nature and did not question him anymore. Rasmani and Mathur were eager to engage Sri Ramakrishna for his temple service, but when the offer was made to him through his brother Ramkumar, the Master declined, saying, "I will not serve anyone but God." When the door of the temple was closed at midday and at night, he went off by himself, entered the jungle around the Pachavati, and spent his time in contemplation of the Mother of the Universe. This worried Hiriday. He was very fond of his young uncle and thought that if the Master passed sleepless nights, he would not be able to stand the hard labor involved in the divine service in the temple. One night, Hirade followed Sri Ramakrishna without his knowledge and saw him enter the jungle near the Panchavati. He knew that if he went near him, the master would be annoyed, so in order to frighten him, he threw stones into the bushes. Finding that this did not bring the master back, he returned to his room. The next day, Hirade asked the master, "What do you do when you enter the jungle at night?" "I meditate there," replied Sri Ramakrishna, "under an Amalakai tree. The scriptures say that if anybody meditates desiring something under an Amalaki tree, his desire is fulfilled." Hirade continued to throw stones as usual, but could not deter the master from passing the nights in meditation in the jungle. One night, Hirade mustered his courage, determined to see for himself what was going on in the dead of night in the jungle. He was startled to find his uncle seated under the tree in deep meditation, without clothes or sacred thread. He thought his uncle had gone mad. He then called to him desperately, "Uncle, what is this? Why have you taken off your clothes and the sacred thread?" At first there was no answer. Then, having regained outer consciousness, Ramakrishna answered, Why don't you know that this is the way one should think of God, free of all ties? From our very birth we have the eightfold fetters of hatred, shame, lineage, pride of good conduct, fear, secretiveness, caste, and grief. The sacred thread means that I am a Brahman, and therefore superior to all. When calling upon the mother, one has to set aside such ideas. So I removed the sacred thread, which I shall put on after I have finished meditation. Hirade was dumbfounded and quietly left the place. Later, on his first vision of Kali, Sri Ramakrishna lived in a state of God intoxication. Hirade was puzzled, watching the astonishing behavior of the master. He used to say, "You felt awestruck when you entered the Kali temple in those days, even when uncle wasn't there, and much, much more so when he was. Yet I couldn't resist the temptation of seeing how he acted at the time of the worship. As long as I was actually watching him, my heart was full of reverence and devotion. But when I came out of the temple, I began to have doubts and would ask myself, has uncle really gone mad? Why else would he do such things during the worship? I was afraid of what Rani and Mathur Babu would say when they came to hear of it, but uncle never worried. I didn't venture to speak to him much any longer. My mouth was closed by fear I can't describe. I felt that there was some kind of barrier between us, so I just looked up at him in silence as best as I could. But I was afraid he would make a scene someday. About Sri Ramakrishna's method of worship, Hirade said, I would notice the uncle taking flowers and bell leaves in his hand, touch his own head, chest, in fact the whole body, including the feet with them, and then offered them at the feet of Kali. I saw how uncle's chest and eyes were always red like those of a drunkard. He'd get up, reeling from the worshipper's seat, climb on the altar, and caress the Divine Mother, touching her affectionately under her chin. He'd begin singing, laughing, joking, and talking with her, or sometimes he'd catch hold of her hands and dance. I saw how, when he was offering cooked food to the Divine Mother, he suddenly get up, take a morsel of rice and curry from the plate in his hand, touch the mother's mouth with it, and say, "Eat, mother, do eat." Then maybe he'd say, "You want me to eat it, and then you'll eat some afterwards? All right, I'm eating it now." And then he'd take some of it to himself and put the rest to her lips again, saying, "I've had some, now you eat." One day, at the time of the food offering, Uncle saw a cat. It had come to the temple mewing. He had fed it with the food which was to be offered to the Divine Mother. "Will you take it, mother?" he asked to the cat. Actions such as these are deemed sacrilegious in Hindu ritual. Gradually, the temple officials came to know about the apparently deranged behavior of Sri Ramakrishna, and they sent a message of complaint to Mathur in Calcutta. One day he arrived unannounced at the temple, and what he saw convinced him that the master was not insane, but living in a higher plane of consciousness. However, Sri Ramakrishna could not continue to the daily ritualistic worship in that state of divine intoxication. One day, Mathur and Hirade were present while he was worshipping in the Kali temple. Suddenly, the master, in ecstasy, rose from his seat and said to Mathur, "Hirade will perform the worship from now on. Mother says that he will accept his worship in the same manner as mine." The devout Mathur accepted the words of the master as a command of the mother. Sri Ramakrishna had now reached a point where he was being swept away by a spiritual tempest, but Mathur and Hirade worried about him. Mathur brought in the best physicians of Calcutta to treat his unusual symptoms, a burning sensation, sleeplessness, excessive gas, etc., but they could not help him. One wise physician did mention that the master had a yogic disease. In 1858, Ramakrishna went to Kamar Kapoor for a visit. His mother and brother, thinking it would steady his mind, arranged his marriage, which took place in 1859. In 1861, Bharvi Brahmani, a sannyasini nun, came to Dakshin War to initiate Sri Ramakrishna into tantric disciplines. She was in her late 30s and extremely beautiful. Seeing her at the Chandri bathing ghat, the master returned to his room and asked Hirade to call her to him. Hirade was rather surprised, for he had never before seen his uncle eager to speak to any strange woman. He had said, "She is a stranger. Why should she come, even if invited? Go and tell her my name, and she will come," replied the master. Hirade brought the Bharvi to Sri Ramakrishna and was amazed when she burst into tears and joy and surprise, as if she had last found her long-lost treasure. Sri Ramakrishna was also moved. In 1863, Sri Ramakrishna completed his tantric sadhana with the sadhanas such as Vasya Bhava, affectionate attitude towards God, and Mahadra Bhava, wife-husband attitude towards God. When Sri Ramakrishna was practicing Mudra Bhava, he dressed like a woman. He considered himself to be Radha, a gopi, and become completely absorbed in the thought of Krishna. One day during this time, said Hirade, Mathur took me into the women's quarters of his Calcutta residence and said, "Can you tell me which of them is your uncle?" And although I'd been living with them so long and serving him daily, I couldn't at first. Uncle used to collect flowers every morning in the garden of Dakshin War with a basket. We'd watch him and we'd notice that he was always stepped out left foot first, as a woman does. In 1864, Totapuri, a Vedanta monk, having stopped at Dakshin War in the course of his travels, initiated Sri Ramakrishna into sannyasa, monastic vows. The master attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the highest non-dualistic experience, within 3 days and remained in that mood for 6 months. One day, Sri Ramakrishna was at Chodni watching the Ganga in an ecstatic mood. 2 boats were at the ghat and boatmen were quarreling over something. Suddenly, the stronger one gave the weaker one a heavy blow to the back. Sri Ramakrishna immediately cried out in pain. Hirade heard it from the Kali temple, came running, and saw the master's back had become red and swollen. Beside himself with anger, Hirade repeatedly said, "Uncle, show me the man who has beaten you. I will chop off his head." After a while, the master calmed down a little. Hirade was amazed to hear from him how he felt pain and got the marks on his back from the boatman's fight. The incident illustrates Ramakrishna's experience of oneness, which is the goal of Vedanta. In 1867, Sri Ramakrishna went to Kamar Kapoor with the Bahavari and Hirade. Through the years of Bahavari had grown egotistic, thinking she was the teacher of Sri Ramakrishna, and she had tried to control him by keeping his wife away from him. Then when she had started to disrupt the social customs of the villagers became upset. At this point, Hirade asked Bahavari to leave Kamar Kapoor, and a furious quarrel ensued. Later on, Bahavari understood her mistake, and begging forgiveness from Sri Ramakrishna, she left for Varanasi. While at Kamar Kapoor, Sri Ramakrishna visited Sihar, Hirade's village. Hirade invited some well-known Vaishnava devotees to meet Sri Ramakrishna and hold religious discourses with him. His mother, Himanji Devi, revered Sri Ramakrishna as her chosen deity and worshipped his feet with flowers. One day she prayed to the master for a boon so that he could die in the holy city of Varanasi. In a state of samadhi, the master blessed her with that boon and later actually died in Varanasi. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll be reading from the life of Nag Mahashay, or as he was called first, Durgacharan Nag. It's about a man who lived his devotion to God in the form of a householder. someone whose longing was to live the teachings of his guru in daily life. Sri Ramakrishna demonstrated to the modern world through him that a person can lead a married life and at the same time have the highest spiritual experience. He was born in 1846 in Bengal. He lost his mom at 8 years old and was raised by his affectionate aunt, who introduced him to the Ramayana and Mahabharata. A lover of truth, he would not lie even as he was subjected to physical harm by other boys. He aspired for an education and wasn't deterred by the 10-mile distance he had to walk back and forced to attend school. At 15, he was married to a girl of 11 in order to live together once both had grown. During the next couple of years, he studied and practiced homeopathy with great success. He treated the poor for free and kept his fees modest for everyone else. What a concept. Even if some people took advantage of it, he served people as God. Although he loved his wife, he kept a distance since he felt that without chastity, one could not realize God. The sudden death of his wife shocked him deeply, and he devoted more of his time to scripture and meditation. Often in the evenings, he would go to the cremation ground of North Calcutta and stay there until late at night. The funeral pyre on the bank of the Ganga reminded him of the impermanence of human life and the unreality of the world. He concluded to think, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. God alone is the truth. Unless he is realized, life is truly a burden. His father, noticing his turning away from homeopathy to practicing spiritual disciplines and cremation grounds, insisted on a new marriage to which Nag Hamashe reluctantly agreed. Upon returning to his trade as a homeopath, his father was infuriated by his modesty in receiving gifts. Durgacharan's faithfulness to his ideal was tested through marriage and through money. Lust and greed, name and fame are the greatest obstacles at every step of his life, but his efforts to overcome them only made him stronger. His young wife joined him in Calcutta and helped him with his duties with the purity of a nun. Looking at her as his co-pilgrim, he said, "Love on the physical plane never lasts. Blessed is he who can love God, heart and soul. Even a little attachment to the body endures for several births. So be not attached to this cage of flesh and bones. Take refuge in the Divine Mother and think of her alone." His friend Suresh introduced him to Sri Ramakrishna, and upon arriving at Dakshineshwar, heard him say, "Live in the world like a mudfish. The fish lives in the mud, but its skin is always bright and shiny. Similarly, remain at home unattached, and the stain of worldliness will not touch your mind." Sri Ramakrishna could convince Nag Hamashe to remain a householder and only to keep his mind fixed on God. Therefore, his life would be an example of how a householder should live. Although living an austere life, he felt the agony of not having completely self-surrendered to the Lord. The Master consoled him, saying, "If you love this," pointing to himself, "everything will be all right." Short before Sri Ramakrishna's passing, Nag Hamashe resolved to transfer the disease to his own body, but was pushed away by Sri Ramakrishna, who knew that he had that power. He was a generous host to many who visit to be in holy company. Every evening, Nag Hamashe Mahashe would wave light and incense before the script picture of Sri Ramakrishna, and the devotees sang Vesper songs and kirtan. Primarily, he was a worshipper of Shakti, the Divine Mother, but he had love and respect for all faiths. He practiced nonviolence throughout his life and perceived God in every being and everything. He went as far as taking the rifles away from some bird hunters which he later returned. When a person becomes spiritual, his heart expands and he feels intensely for others. He had great empathy with animals, feeding cats and dogs or buying fish to set them free. To him, all women were the veritable manifestation of the Divine Mother. Desire for progeny, wealth and name and fame simply could not appear in his mind. But as he himself observed, a man can overcome the temptation of gold and diamonds through renunciation, but he needs the grace of God to overcome lust. Where there is lust, there God is not, and where God is, there cannot be lust. As long as your body is not burnt into the ashes, do not be proud of your chastity. No one can escape Maya unless the Divine Mother allows one to pass. Without having taken any monastic vows, he was a true monk. He was extremely humble and would rarely accept gifts. Even when offered to stay at Belur Monastery by Swami Vivekananda, he declined, since Sri Ramakrishna had asked him to stay home and live the life of a householder. Nak Mahashay never initiated anyone, but he was an awakener of souls, and his life was an inspiration to many people. In 1899, Nak Mahashay became deathly ill with colic and dysentery. He said to his wife, "My prarabdha karma has almost come to an end. Only a little is left. Don't worry about this cage of flesh and bones." His final words were a salutation to his beloved master. With folded hands, he murmured, "Grace, grace, you bless me out of your boundless mercy." Sorry, I got carried away a little bit there. Okay, so thanks everybody for coming. It was very nice. So many words. Probably in 6 months I have forgotten most of them. But I think that the words in our hearts bring forward their own fruits in our actions in daily life. So on behalf of the Vedanta Society of Portland, I gladly express my vote of thanks to all participants in this devotees meet. A heartfelt appreciation for your offerings of prayers, songs, and reading of excerpts in remembrance of Sri Ramakrishna and his teachings. I am grateful for the tireless work of our devotees, Swamiji, and first of all, Holy Mother, Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, who inspire us daily on the path to self-realization, to courageously choose reality over illusion and freedom over bondage. Thank you all.
After this, we will have Chaitanya prayer composed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then offer the flowers, take flowers, offer to Sri Ramakrishna. He is embodiment of all gods and goddesses.
Chamundai Vijay Om Aim Hrim Klim Chamundai Vijay Om Aim Hrim Klim Chamundai Vijay. May the Supreme Reality protect us from all hostile forces. Chamundai Vijay Om Aim Hrim bondage breaker thou. Sri Ramakrishna, before thee we bow. Our love for you grows and grows eternally. Eternally. Sri Ramakrishna, we're tired of this play. Sri Ramakrishna, let us hear you say, you are my own and I am yours eternally. Eternally. Only you will know when our ignorance will end. Only you can save us from the hands of time. Sri Ramakrishna, light of love we praise. Sri Ramakrishna, no darkness can erase. Your presence deep within our soul, eternally. Eternally. Eternally, eternally. Chant the name of the Lord and His glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire.
You can repeat.
Worldly lust raging furiously within. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drown deep in the waves of His bliss, chanting His name continuously, tasting His nectar at every step, bathing in His name, that bath for weary souls. Various are thy names, O Lord. In each and every name thy power resides. No times are set, no rites are needful, for chanting of thy name, so vast is thy mercy. How huge then is my wretchedness, who find in this empty life and heart no devotion to thy name. O my mind, be humbler than a blade of grass. Be patient and forbearing like the tree. Take no honor to thyself, give honor to all. Chant unceasingly the name of the Lord. O Lord and soul of the universe, mine is no prayer for wealth or retinue, the playthings of lust or the toys of fame. As many times as I may be reborn, grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for thee. A drowning man in this world's fearful ocean is thy servant, O sweet one. In thy mercy, consider him as dust beneath thy feet. Ah, how I long for the day when an instant separation from thee, O Govinda, will be as 1,000 years, when my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without thee is a heartless void. Prostrate at thy feet let me be, in unwavering devotion, neither imploring the embrace of thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of thy presence, though it tears my soul asunder. O thou, who stealest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone.
I'll recite a mantra, please. Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanugraha Kripa Bhaktanugraha Kripa Drita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya Sarvadharma Sarupini Avatara Varisthaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Yeah, please now offer your prayer. Sri Ramakrishna manifested as his devotees also. So in and through his devotees, it is Sri Ramakrishna who manifested. Please.